I think you and I are the only ones so far, but we'll give everybody a few minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
How are you this evening?
I'm better this week. I actually had a headache last week, a splitting
Mhm.
headache, and a dentist appointment, but they were both totally unrelated.
Yeah. Did you have the shot like recently, or were you
I
okay?
had it after that. I had
Oh,
it
okay. Just
on Tuesday,
something.
and I did end up getting sick on Wednesday.
Oh,
So
did you
last week was not a good week for me,
at
but I'm
all?
glad it's over with.
Yeah. Several people told me, but they had headaches after their shot. Um, I didn't have anything with my second shot. It was my first one that I got really
Oh,
sick with. Yeah. So they say that um that's the one that people who had COVID, which I didn't know I did, but um
oh no kidding.
yeah, my husband got really sick with the second one, 14 hours, and then it left him like that. It was like
Well,
magic.
that was good. Mine was 36 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Somebody was just telling me they're having this similar. Did you have a high fever? And
I did fever, chills, achiness, nausea.
so you were sick into the weekend.
Wednesday, Wednesday into Thursday. I
Oh
mean, I'm sorry,
no.
I got a Tuesday afternoon, so Wednesday, and then Wednesday evening. hmm Yeah, but hey, better than getting COVID.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Hi, Ann. Good. There you go.
You there?
Yes, now I am. I can hear you.
All right. Okay, all right.
Okay. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes. I know that I had spoke to the Dadoviches, and they were going to try to get on, and I know two other people who were going to try to get on. So I'm just going to give everybody a little time because sometimes technology gives everybody headaches. So I'm going to give everybody. Last
Can
week,
I ask one quick question?
I'm sorry, Ann, I missed that.
I just wanted to ask one question. I don't know if
Oh,
you might have covered it when I was on because I was with IA a couple of nights. When we're done with this weekend, will we have read this entire book?
pretty much, yeah. But the only thing that I want to tell you that's kind of tricky is that we're doing week 5. There's still a week 6 to have some reading. So if you finish that out, you'll definitely
Mhm.
be, because it's really like next
Okay.
Wednesday would be the 33rd day. But we're just gonna kind of do it on May Day. It seems like the best day to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and then hopefully we have some surprises for you if they get there. It's funny, in the midst of COVID last April and May, I didn't have any trouble with my orders. I got them all timely. But things like lately, I've been ordering, I'm not getting them. Like I ordered this at the beginning, something for this consecration. I ordered it the week we began, and I still don't have it yet. So it's kind of weird how so I hope we have something for Saturday. Now, what the plan is,
Getting mad that I'm getting mail that I should have gotten in the middle of March to
okay, so
this
you're
day.
on a delay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna do is, we have that video conference on the consecration of Saint Joseph from Steubenville. I'm gonna tape it. I'm also gonna try to tape what's happening, but not a Zoom. I'm gonna record it, and then I'm gonna post it for everybody so that those who are at home want to do it at home, they can just hit the recording. I'm not gonna do it. It seems to not work when we try to do it on Zoom. It's echoey. It's last week was just miserable, and then everybody signed off, so it was like very bad, and I felt so bad about that. So we went back to sending me home and Amy being in person, and then because we were trying to do it simultaneous, and that just didn't work. So that said, I'll get us started if that's okay, and if anyone just joins us, we'll let them in, and then we'll talk a little bit about how our praying time is going and how the work for this week. Is that all right with everyone?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Here we go. Go like this. All right. So let's just let us rest through this music because we're getting close. So that was the Pentecost sequence that says, "Come, Holy Spirit." And as we get closer and closer, I don't know about you, but I can't believe we're so far along in the Easter season. It has flown by. I don't know if that's any of your experiences.
Yep. I thought the same thing after this past Sunday, fourth Sunday of Easter already.
Yeah,
Gee
Good
whiz.
Shepherd Sunday always is like, "Oh, we're almost done." Oh,
Mhm.
I want to take some time in the next 2 weeks to make sure that I fully take in this season. So the next prayer that we're to do today is on 240. It's the Memorare of Saint Joseph. Once again, I'll pray it if you don't mind. That way we can try to be in unison. You can mute yourself and pray it along with me. Remember, O most chaste spouse of the Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto you, my spiritual Father, and beg your protection. O foster Father of the Redeemer, despise not my petitions, but in your goodness hear and answer me. Amen. We pray this prayer throughout this time, and when I started this prayer, I guess 4 weeks ago, um, I probably was praying more words than I was praying intention. But as the weeks have progressed, I realize um, how much I am valuing the idea of Saint Joseph taking my prayer and protecting me. I have just fallen into his arms, so to speak. So I'm hoping that you are having similar experiences where your prayer is just changing your relationship with Joseph. Last week we got to talk about, and Anne, I know you were busy doing the RCIA, but we talked a little bit about Mary's wedding ring from Joseph, which is housed not far from Assisi in Italy. In fact, it's in a place called Persia, which is funny. The prized possession that comes out of there is chocolate. So anybody who is an Italian chocolatier will tell you that's where most of the good chocolate comes from in Italy. And it's really, like a side note, one of the chocolate factors was sold to Nestle, which but it was like one of the smoothest chocolates I'd ever eaten. It was from there. But most people, when they go to Assisi, never get down there. But her wedding rings are reportedly there. And they're, if you remember those readings from last week. So there's a couple of videos that I'm going to throw in the notes tonight that will, if you want to kind of learn more about that ring, since neither of you, I don't think, were able to be on last week, and you can kind of look that up. Today's our focus is going to be on a couple really cool things, but it was talking about the staircase of Loretto. Have either of you heard of it before? And
Yes,
Unmute
it's
myself.
been on my bucket
I
list for
did.
years.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did, Tina. There was I think a few years back, it was 2020, did a segment on that.
oh yeah,
Really, yeah, I was really surprised to hear about it and then to read about it in here in the book. So that's on my bucket list to do, to go see it one day.
it was actually on my bucket list. And the sisters, we're gonna watch a teeny tiny video about the staircase. The sisters wrote a book about it, a children's book, and I had it in my repertoire of things that I forgot I even had. But I went searching for it because I thought this is so strangely familiar to me. And so I had the book, and then what I might do is just I'll show some pictures the next time and have everybody, if they want to. It's a very inexpensive book, but the story is a wonderful one, and I'm gonna play the little video just because it's worth seeing, and it's worth in your prayer, imagining yourself maybe having encounters with Saint Joseph that you didn't recognize as him. And when you watch this, you'll see what I mean by that. Oh dear. Mm-mm-mm. You all see it?
So who built it? Nobody knows. Why does it stand? How much weight will it hold? Nobody knows. And where does the wood come from? Nobody knows. And that's why this staircase is still known as the miraculous staircase even to this very day. My name is Richard Lindsley. I'm a curator here at Loretto Chapel. I've worked here since 1976. And I want to tell you the story about our chapel and the staircase. Our chapel was built by a French architect by the name of Projectus Millet. He patterned this after Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. It's my belief that Projectus Millet wanted to put in a circular staircase to our choir loft right from the beginning, but apparently he was not able to find anyone in 1877 to come all the way from France and help him do that. So he completed the chapel in 1878, after 5 years of working on it, with no access to the balcony. And then, a year later, he died. The sisters asked the local carpenters to build the staircase, but they failed. They didn't know how to do it. On the last day of their novena, just as they finished their final prayer, a knock came at the chapel door, and this elderly man with a gray beard and a donkey by his side, telling the sister that he had come to build their staircase. But he turned out to be a little bit strange because he was very reclusive. He insisted upon working inside this chapel with the doors locked, never allowing anyone to see him work on the staircase. This went on for 3 months, until finally one morning the sisters came in, and to their surprise, he was gone. So to this day, it is still a historical mystery who that strange man was. And I'll find out the details on the other side.
So the legend has it that the worker was Saint Joseph, and that he wanted to complete this work so as to bring people closer to heaven, and allow people to hear the music that the choirs could bring. But that's the story. And the sisters, what he didn't tell in the story is the sisters prayed very hard, and they kept praying to Saint Joseph because they needed a carpenter. And so he was sort of the fulfillment of the carpenter, and they just always attributed to Saint Joseph getting the work completed. So I keep thinking about those times, like when we might pray, and as I was beginning with that prayer earlier, how that when we go for protection, maybe Saint Joseph just answers our prayer and we don't even know it was him. He remains that shadow in the gospel, that shadow in our life. And if we kind of increase our petition to him, he increases his activity in our life. If that makes any sense. I don't know if any of you know if that resonates with you or not, but I am just convinced there are so many stories and so many occasions where that will be linked back to St. Joseph's intercession that we never hear about, we don't talk about. So any thoughts? Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Maybe that's who's always on my shoulder when I'm driving, because I've had a couple close calls. Maybe I'm looking
Yeah.
down and all of a sudden, boom, a car stopped in front of me. So I put my brakes on, and I always attributed that to maybe a guardian angel. Maybe it's St. Joseph, and I didn't realize that until now, until I'm thinking about it.
It would be so sensible because he's that protecting father. I mean, I'm going to spend some time in this entire year of St. Joseph reflecting on that. I'm taking great consolation in the idea of having a I mean, I've always loved the mantle of Mary, and now I keep thinking about the strong arm of Joseph around us. And Anne, you have a Joseph, so and he's important in your
I
life.
know.
Yeah, so it's just a fascinating.
And I keep texting him and then sending him pictures of pages in the book.
That's
I
awesome.
mute, I mute.
Mhm.
So all this time I've been saying, Joseph, read this. Joseph, read this. And I send him pictures of the readings in the book. Today, all through Lent and since Lent, if I have some time and I'm working on something, I've gone to YouTube and I put on like either, from Mike Schmitz or, Bishop Robert Barron, just to listen to something. Or you got me hooked on Bethany Madonna,
I know.
Sister Bethany Madonna. Oh, she is good.
Oh, it's isn't
And then there's other one, Miriam James.
James,
or
that's
something.
my best girlfriend.
She's good. Yeah, she's also good. I feel for all the, don't excuse my expression, for all practicing on YouTube, I'm so excited to have that on YouTube and be able to listen to it. But on Saturday, I'm outside to do work, so I turned my phone onto YouTube and I'm going to listen to something. And here was the conversion story of Father Calloway. Have you heard it?
I have. Isn't it
I
amazing?
immediately said that to all my kids. I said, Jenny's coffee to you? Who would have thought that? I mean,
His
talk about St. Paul in our midst.
his story, and last week I showed a video from him that was just so he was talking about Joseph being married to the Immaculate Mother, and how who better, this is kind of Jesus is the architect, as God, of Mary, and who would you make her to be? And it's talking about her as being, and in Revelations, how we hear her putting her foot on the serpent. And so it's just, it's a wonderful thing by him. He's funny. I'll make sure you got, because you didn't get to see that, either of you. I'll make sure you see it. It's just one of his, he's just a really engaging. It was in like a workshop he was doing. Another thing that he has, I know I'm backwards, but this is called St. Joseph Gems, and it's written by him.
No, it's right.
Oh, it's right for you. You're seeing it right. Okay. And it's like one of those
Yeah, we can see it. Okay.
weekly prayers or daily prayers. And so what it does is it takes a lot of what we did in the consecration and puts them into smaller little pieces. So this is really a worthwhile. I mean, it really is a little gem. It's a prayer a day. And so I'm highly recommending this for if you want to keep it going for the rest of the year. But it will take different saints and give quotes from them. It will give quotes from his book, the different prayers. So it's you can get it on Amazon. It's not like hard to find. But so I wanted to tell you a little story about Saint Teresa of Lisieux. That's in our book. I was talking about her. I didn't know this. I'm sure all of you experts in French history know this, but her sister is up for canonization. I think that's just amazing. But her
Which
mom,
sister?
I will tell you how to spell her name. It's like with L-A, almost like Leona, but it's a French name. So let me make sure I get this right. Oh, of course I can't see it. I will write it down because I'm looking for it and I can't see it. But her mom, Saint Zélie Martin, had 9 children, and 4 of her girls, were Carmelites, and all 4 of them have done exceptional things. And then it would be Saint Teresa's sister that was slightly right above her, because when she died, she was only 4 when her mom passed. So anyway, where I was going with this story is that she was very, very sick, and her mother put her under the protection of Saint Joseph because her mother was sick. She herself was sick. And so she put her under the Saint Joseph's protection. And then, she did remarkable things as her life would continue. But Saint Zélie and her husband, both of them named her by Pope John Paul, Saint John Paul, saints of the church, were dedicated to Saint Joseph and the holy life of a family. So they took their example from him. And so it sort of makes sense that all their 9 children were dedicated and very holy people. So there's just so many things that people that we didn't know about, or maybe we just wasn't our time yet to know, went to Saint Joseph, and they used him as a model as they raised their children. So it's I will honestly tell you, I wasn't aware, and through the reading of this book, and then one thing leads you down one rabbit hole to another one. There are just so many saints who have their self dedicated to him. I don't know if you've been noticing that when you've been reading. Anybody see that? Yeah, pretty much.
Yes, all the little excerpt he has in there. Let me see.
Yeah. So what else?
His writing style.
His writing style. His writing style.
It's just so easy to read. Father Calloway style, and then when he puts in all those other things from the different saints and the blesseds, it just augments what he's saying so well.
It does. And so I think that the book, long after the consecration is done, it'll be worth going back to those wonders and just reading some of them and taking them in, because I think each time we'll learn something new that we might have missed. I told Amy this earlier today, that even how astutely you read this, and I'm reading like to really pick things out of, I know that I left behind, like it's like on a meal, it's like I picked the bone out, but I left the meat. So there's so much left in this book that I hope to pursue after we pass our 30 days or 33 days. One of the things that that has been something that I had never, till I read this, was that not only were there, we know the apparitions of Mary, but there were apparitions that Saint Joseph and Saint Mary appeared in. And many of them are being reviewed by the church now. I mean, that is just mind blowing. So I do have another video to show you about that. Of course I do. Wait, this has to go away. This one here. All right, here we go.
Hello and welcome to Marycast. This is Dr. Mark Mervalli. I am very happy to bring to you information, messages, in fact, from St. Joseph through an overall message called the Messages of Our Lady of America. Now, I want to give you the background on this so you're clear that we're at the heart of the church as we're talking about these very beautiful and profound messages concerning St. Joseph. Now, the overall messages under the title of Our Lady of America were a series of messages which were conveyed by Our Lady and St. Joseph to a religious sister, Sister Mary Ephraim, in the 1950s and on into the 1960s and 70s. She was a religious sister in the Archdiocese of Cincinnati at the time. And what's critically important is that the Archbishop of the time, Archbishop Paul Leopold, Archbishop of Cincinnati, was the spiritual director of Sister Mary Ephraim, later referred to as Sister Mildred. He gave the imprimatur to the messages I'm going to read to you now. So you know that they are free from doctrinal error. The imprimatur was granted by Archbishop Leopold. The Nihil Obstat, the theologian who studies to make sure there's no doctrinal error, the Nihil Obstat was given by the Archbishop to be Daniel Pilarczyk in 1963. Now, these messages of Our Lady of America are very profound. And again, we're going to focus specifically on the St. Joseph messages because they are extraordinary. and something we really have to appreciate. But I do want to mention that on May 31st, 2007, Cardinal-elect Raymond Burke, who was formerly the Archbishop of St. Louis, wrote a letter to every bishop in the United States saying the following, that essentially that he had studied these messages of Our Lady of America, that he had looked at the actions of the Archbishop at the time, Archbishop Leopold, who once again was the spiritual director of Sister Mary Ephraim, gave the imprimatur. He also had a carved image of Our Lady of America commissioned. He had a medal struck concerning and gave permission for that distribution of Our Lady of America. So it was the decision and the conclusion of Archbishop Burke to state that as he examines it canonically, the messages already obtain a ecclesiastical affirmation, that they're already in organically so in light of what Archbishop Leopold did, the bishop at the time of these apparitions and visions, that they already have the status of a approved church apparition. So once again, Archbishop and now Cardinal-elect Raymond Burke sent a letter to the bishops of the United States encouraging the enactment of what was requested at Our Lady of America through these visions. And also, again, you have the imprimatur by the local bishop. So we are on safe ground and obedient ground as we talk about these messages. Now, very briefly, the messages of Our Lady of America call for an image, a statue of Our Lady of America to be solemnly processed into the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, the national shrine of our country, the Basilica, which is in Washington, D.C. And that if the bishops would solemnly process the image, the statue into the national shrine, that the shrine would become a spiritual center of purity, not only for the United States, but for the entire world. Our Lady said that more miracles than Lourdes and Fatima, but miracles not of a physical nature, but of a spiritual nature, would take place in the National Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. So we encourage prayer and petition according to individual cases that indeed our bishops will comply with the letter of Archbishop Burke and mostly the request of Our Lady that an image of Our Lady of America would be solemnly processed into the national shrine. It seems in a real sense a little cooperation for such massive potential grace that the national shrine would become a pilgrimage center for purity, not only for our own country, but from our country to other parts of the world. We desperately need purity. That's pretty clear to everyone. Now, within that context, Our Lady made reference to some beautiful truths on St. Joseph, and St. Joseph himself gives messages to the same visionary, Sister Mary Ephraim. And I say once again, these messages also have the official imprimatur of Bishop Paul Leopold, of the Archbishop of Cincinnati, and the former spiritual director of the visionary, who died in the year 2000. So let's hear what she says, and then, in fact, what St. Joseph specifically says about his role in Nazareth, his role for the church, and his role that heaven desires to be enacted right now. Again, my friends, it's a beautiful message. And of course, you can go to ourladyofamerica.org and download these yourself, or motherofallpeoples.com. And there's an article entitled St. Joseph in the Messages of Our Lady of America. So along with the great history of what the church already says about St. Joseph, that he is, as St. Augustine says, the virginal father, not the biological father, but the virginal father of Jesus Christ, that he's protector of the Holy Family. He's proclaimed the patron of the Universal Church in the 19th century. John the 23rd of the Second Vatican Council makes him patron of the Second Vatican Council. And he has a special role in what theologians would call protodulia, that is, that among devotion after our Blessed Mother, St. Joseph should have first place. So the love of St. Joseph and the unique sanctity of St. Joseph after Our Lady is already part of our tradition. Now let's hear how these messages will just confirm that. I'm going to read this message of October 1956. reading from the memoirs. In early October 1956, about a week after Our Lady's first appearance, St. Joseph, though I did not see him at this time, spoke to me the following words, quote, "It is true, my daughter, that immediately after my conception, I was, through the future merits of Jesus, and because of my exceptional role of future Virgin Father, cleansed from the stain of original sin. I was from that moment confirmed in grace and never had the slightest stain on my soul. This is my unique privilege among men. My pure heart also was from the first moment of existence inflamed with love for God. Immediately, at the moment when my soul was cleansed from original sin, grace was infused in it in such abundance that, excluding my holy spouse, I surpassed the holiness of the highest angel in the angelic choir. My heart suffered with the hearts of Jesus and Mary. Mine was a silent suffering, for it was my special vocation to hide and shield, as long as God willed, the Virgin Mother and Son from the malice and hatred of men. The most painful of my sorrows was that I knew beforehand of their passion, yet would not be there to console them. Their future suffering was ever present to me and became my daily cross. So I became in union with my holy spouse, co-redemptor of the human race. Through compassion for the sufferings of Jesus and Mary, I cooperated as no other in the salvation of the world." Well, let's recap that powerful message. What does St. Joseph say in this first locution to Sister Mary Ephraim? He says, first of all, that he was not immaculately conceived, but a moment after conception, he was cleansed from original sin. This is something similar to being baptized in the womb. This is a privilege that St. John the Baptist had as well, but not a moment after conception, as was true of St. Joseph. He also says that from that moment on, he never had personal sin, never had the slightest stain of sin on his soul. And this is his unique privilege among men. And we're going to see that while the sanctity of St. Joseph does not in any sense compete with the particular and the exclusive hyperdulia sanctity, as St. Thomas Aquinas would say, of Our Lady, it is clearly beyond all levels of sanctity. Now, St. Joseph also says that his sanctity is above the angels, the highest angel in heaven, and that he became the co-redemptor. Now, why the co-redemptor? Jesus is the one redeemer. Mary is the co-redemptress. She shares in his redemption. Joseph is the co-redemptor because he knew the passion. And he knew that he would not be there with Mary and Jesus. He would not be there to protect them. And this was his greatest suffering. So because of this, St. Joseph was third after Jesus and our Blessed Mother in participating in redemption. Powerful message on St. Joseph. More to come in our next segment. Stay with us as we talk about St. Joseph in the message of Our Lady of America. This is Mark Miravalle saying thank you and God bless.
So that's pretty heavy stuff. And as you know, it's still under review in the church. But I think it gives us a lot to think about in even, if it doesn't ever get approved in our lifetime, although it's en route to being that happening.
Hello and welcome to MaryCast. This is Dr. Mark
sorry,
Miravalle, and we're talking about...
Sorry about that. That just went away. Okay. So I don't know. What were your thoughts? How did it affect you? Did you go, or was like
Was that in the reading too? It sounded a little bit familiar to me. Okay. It was good to reinforce that and to refresh my memory about that I never realized that he knew of the passion and he just kept it all to himself and didn't reveal it.
Too.
Yeah. I thought, wow. I mean, that he knew this was coming, but he just, couldn't do anything about it because that's not the plan. Yeah. What a burden to carry.
There are 3 parts to that. I didn't watch. It's like 30 minutes long in total. So that was the first 10, but I thought it gave us a taste and it kind of, as you say, connected to the book. It's worth looking at just to kind of think about and contemplate. I mean, where it's going to go, I don't know. But what it did for me, it was a reminder of what I have been learning about St. Joseph, that his role was to save the Redeemer, to make sure that he was safe the entire time, so that he could do what God, that God so loved the world, that he gave us the Son, that he was a part of keeping that incarnation alive. And like I said, in the Passion part, just oh my gosh, it's mind-boggling. Um, any other thoughts? Anne, do you have any thoughts about it?
Well, it just brought me to that section we read in this past week about the perpetual adoration. That when you stopped and thought about what he was writing, from the moment Jesus was conceived in Mary's womb, Joseph was in adoration of that miracle, that son,
Yeah.
that I couldn't imagine as a human being knowing that he knew that that was God's son and it was his response. The weight of that responsibility is just more than my human mind can even wrap itself around.
Yeah, the
So,
gravity. You're right. The weight, that
oh
gravity.
yeah, that's just my second thought was, what are our bishops waiting for?
Here,
But
here.
anyway, I know they have to do a lot of discussing and,
Yeah. And the fact that she died
you
in
know,
2000 and we're already 20 years past that, you know, that's a,
and look at what we're up against in our culture. And it's not getting any better. Do it. I mean, it's her, right?
no, and it really has me thinking. I mean, we talked about this before. I just realized how, um, like in many ways we do this with fathers, but how I just presumed his presence, but I didn't give him um, as much thought and devotion that I needed to in my prayer. I keep thinking about those trips in Egypt and those 27. I talked a little bit about last week, but the scripture leaves us off saying that they went to Egypt and then they come back 3 years. We don't really, in the Roman rite, explore what did he do in Egypt. And we talked a little bit about it last week in the class, that the Coptic rite, which is the Egyptian rite in communion with the Roman Church, has Joseph and Mary traveling to 27 different places, and everywhere they went, there was a living spring of water would spring up. So it's almost like a foreshadowing of what you hear in John, the Gospel of John. I am the living water.
Mm.
Do not be thirsty. But it's this, the Coptic rite. We don't always know our brothers and sisters in faith who are in union with us. We don't really know. And they have churches built in all 27 of those spots. And the reason why I bring it up, that it's important, is that Herod had henchmen, so to speak, and so Joseph was moving Mary and Joseph and Jesus around so that Herod, until he died, which would be 3 days, wouldn't have Jesus killed. Herod would have sent people after this newborn king that they had heard about, and that just blows my mind because we don't think about all that he did to protect Jesus in those 3 years. We just send him to Egypt, and one day he's back in Nazareth. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's just, oh my gosh.
This whole thing has been so,
Yeah.
this has been so eye-opening. It's like, I feel like guilty because I never gave Joseph any time before.
Yeah.
And about a year now, my one cousin has been telling me, oh, Anne, you got to do St. Joseph. If you concentrate yourself to St. Joseph, it's totally amazing. We all need this day. Manhood is being stomped on. They need St. Joseph. And I'm like, very excited about his faith and things. And he very tried to evangelize. But I didn't realize what he meant until I started reading this, and now I'm feeling the same way.
Yeah, I feel like, and then
All these things about
I guess my question to both of you, did it change your relationship, even if my father's deceased? I know Anne, yours is still living. I don't know if yours, Lynn, is
Oh, yeah, Tina, I meant to mention this also. My father passed away December 23rd last year. And I've been finding out by reading this, it's like, oh my gosh, my dad was St. Joseph to me. And I never really realized that. All these things that I'm finding out about St. Joseph, how wonderful that my dad did the same thing for me and all of us. I have 5 other siblings,
Oh, wow.
and my mom's still alive. And yeah, so this has been a real eye opener for me as well. I'm getting into more and more realizations with St.
It
Joseph.
really has challenged me in my prayer, to the intercession of my own father. And then today's reading about St. Joseph's work, his work, they called it his work, I think, of getting people from purgatory to heaven. And that was part of, they kind of, talk about how he got Mary and Jesus where he needed to go. He helps get us there too. And in that way, not that, I have no idea where, my folks are, but what it did to me, it allowed me to take another step into my relationship with my parents, who I still grieve to this day deeply. And then it has opened up like a grief moment, but it really, and it reminds me, to see if this resonates. In many ways, my father was a forgotten saint of our family. We always thought my mother was the saint, but in many ways, my father was the forgotten saint too. And he stood, like you just said, like in the footsteps of Joseph, quiet behind the scenes, but he made sure everything, and that I was so well taken care of, even after his death. So this whole consecration has deepened my personal relationship with my dad, and I think it challenges all of us to look at our father relationships.
It makes me look at my grandfather, my mother's father. He was a quiet, tall man, never said much. He suffered with narcolepsy a
Oh
majority of his
my!
adult years.
Oh my!
Yeah, but thank goodness he had my grandmother who said, "Ray, wake up," about 2 or 3 times in her life. But he was a quiet man, and as I got, now I didn't see much of him because he lived in Oregon. But as I got older and I was going out there and I was spending more time with living in their home, I noticed that my grandfather was quietly work. He came to New York a couple of times. My parents would have all they wanted done at the house. And I spent hours garage just watching my grandfather build. I mean, he built beautiful desks. He put stuff in our house. And he would just, I don't ever remember him cursing. But I do know I got older, and thing is how I noticed every day around 3 o'clock he would be missing. And then one day I accidentally discovered he was in his bedroom on his knees praying every day. And that moved me, like that little moment. It's like Amnesis talk about with the sacrament. Whenever I think about that moment when I saw him his knees on the hard linoleum floor in his bedroom praying. And then the other man in my life was my father-in-law, Joseph, my husband's father. He was like that too. I lived with him probably majority of the last 2 years of his life. And that man worked on carpentry. I have coffee tables. I have a grandfather clock in my house that he built. And he just worked on his carpentry, but he's suffering so badly from cancer. But every day at 3 o'clock, he would stop whatever he was doing. He would go into his bedroom and he'd kneel down. And those two examples, along with my own husband, who was very much a father of faith in our lives, they're just, I never realized how much fatherhood reflects of St. Joseph's life, the kind of fatherhood I experienced with those 3 men in life. My own dad, yeah, my dad was more of a talkative Joseph, but those 3 were all quiet, silent, carry their burdens in their own type of men. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking about. So my reading
this prayer, these prayers, these stories, these saints' writings, and again, highlights how, how we might have had people in our life who emulated Joseph, and for whatever reason they were in the shadows. We never thought about it till this moment when they came forward out of these shadows because of our study of Joseph. One of the things that May 1st brings us is that Saint Joseph the Worker, and you described them working, those three men, and quietly working, just doing that. Pope John Paul, or Saint John Paul II, was the first one to write what work is. He spoke a lot about it, and everybody speculates it came from his experience of the Nazis and what his life like was in Poland. He wrote this wonderful document on work and the vocation of work, and in his document he talks about how sometimes we feel burdened by work, but in the same way we identify by work. This is what I do. We introduce people and say, this is what I do. And this is, and it may be even in our roles as mother or sister or daughter, that there's work that we do. And one of the challenges that St. John Paul gave us was finding the dignity of work. And he speaks to St. Joseph at that point, because Joseph was known as a worker, silent worker, and he worked to take care of the Blessed Mother. He worked to take care of Jesus. He was a trade as a carpenter. How was our work holy? And St. John Paul, he was the first to try to put into writing what the church has always known about how there is a virtue, there is there is merit to our work. It's part of our vocations. And he had so like some people that work with him had them do an exercise. And this is something that if you have some time in the week ahead, on one side you write down all the tasks of your work, maybe your chores, washing the floor, whatever, your laundry, whatever it is, you write down on one side. And on the other side you write down all the things that you do that are dedicated to being holy. And the challenge is recognizing that things that are on this left column also are on that right column. The Benedictines understand that when they have that, their expression that work is prayer. But St. John Paul was emphatic that we began to understand how our work, if done with dignity and treating people with dignity while we work and one another, has great holiness attached to it. In fact, part of our saintliness, our call to sainthood, comes from our work. And that's why St. Joseph the Worker is so important when you look to how he modeled work and what it meant to be fair and just. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah, I feel it every day, Tina. Ora e labora. I meditate on that all day long. Every time I'm changing another diaper, like the last couple of weeks, I've been changing Jack around to get him to go on the pod. I have to keep reminding myself, Jesus is in him, and I'm serving Jesus, and I do this, Lord, because I'm doing it because I'm called by you to do this. And it's just, I get through my days that way. And when you stop and think, like listing your work, it's all the little things you do in between that you do because you love your family and you want to be in service to them, and just take care of them in those little ways, which they never in a million years will see.
Exactly.
But yeah, Orale Labora is the way I work.
And it's really important that sometimes when we feel like we get overcome by those tasks that seem like just annoying, but we have to do them. And one of the readers I was reading gave the image of a mom picking up Cheerios off the floor for the umpteenth time that day at midnight, and all she really wanted to do was crawl in bed. And how do you find God in that moment? And what St. John Paul really was telling us was we have to find the dignity of that work in that, because everything we do matters. Everything we do defines our vocation as who we are as followers of Jesus Christ and how we express that. And that we should take a certain amount of pride in even our volunteer work, but also our labors, even if it's not the desire of what we wanted to do. There is a dignity that comes with work. So it's sort of fascinating how St. Joseph sort of covers all aspects of our lives when you start looking at those titles of him. You know what I mean? And it's kind of wonderful. We're going to gather,
Yeah.
like I said, either virtually or on that feast of St. Joseph the Worker. I always envisioned this, and I can't remember the
We're talking
artist.
Saturday morning.
This carpenter image of Joseph, like with it's like carved on a wood panel. There's this image that you often see of him, and he has a axe and he has a hammer in one hand and he has the wood in front of him. But it also now, and it's like my preoccupation with this Egypt thing, all the things he had to do to keep Jesus safe blows my mind. Like how, I mean, I'm sure there's literature in the Coptic tradition that has more about Joseph and what he did in Egypt, but I'm just now beginning to unpack it. But how he cared for them, how he got their food. I mean, what did he do? Was he fishing? I mean, we just lost those 3 years in the scriptures. So
Yeah.
he was truly a
But
worker.
then it says in here, you never think about that the gold, frankincense, and myrrh, that the gold kept them during that time in Egypt. But they lived in poverty of life, is what I see it. Because if you're talking like they never could settle down because of Herod being after them, that's a terrible kind of poverty. And one thing this has made me look at, Tina, in our area, so many people from Nepal have moved in, including around my neighborhood. And a lot of the people in the neighborhood are like, oh, they buy that house, and I gotta, I've been thinking that way too. But then I realized, doing this, God has really worked on my heart, because now I have the neighbors right on my back patio, Ram and Padam. And I'm laughing so hard because they're out there trying to follow their mother's wishes, making a farm out of the back hill. And they're always talking to me about, yeah, it's so hard, They're so frustrated because they'll do something one day and mom will come out and say, no, change it. But anyway, I see them now in the eyes of the Holy Family. What the Holy Family had to go through, that they lived through themselves.
Yeah, they were straight
And
from Egypt. They were sent back to the land that held them slaves. You know what I mean? That's when you go, what? It's just mind blowing.
Gotta be faith.
Yeah,
Through day by day.
Yeah, and that faith and that trust in God to just follow what God says, putting their trust in God, knowing that God will take them where he wants to go and will speak to them. I mean, I think there are probably many more dreams that we don't have recorded that Joseph had in order to keep that Holy Family safe. I just can't imagine that we only have a couple. It just doesn't seem like that. He seems to be a man that was so connected to God. So as we get closer to the May, which is that month of Mary, but also begins with the Feast of St. Joseph, that's when you go, wait a minute, the church knows what it's doing, even though I didn't catch on. The two of them, are so amazing together. And so any actually last thoughts? There's so much in this that's something that I didn't touch on with one of these questions. Anything catch anybody or you wanted to talk about?
Another thing that just wowed me was when you think about the importance of marriage and a couple. Like it talks about Adam and Eve being the very first couple of God, and they brought us into that sin. But it took this beautiful, perfectly virgin spiritual couple to bring us out of sin through the raising of Jesus in this world. Theologically, it's like it's opened my eyes. You ever have that moment you just see the same things just seem to go doom, 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 and they fit together? That's been happening so much when I think about that lately.
You were saying you got broke up, Lynn.
No, I was just listening.
Oh, you said something.
Yeah, I feel we covered pretty much what I was thinking too, but I'm just trying to be more aware of everyday actions and occurrences and asking St. Joseph for help, to get me through things that happen along the way, or just thanking him for being there for me, like I do with Jesus and Mary all the time.
Yeah, definitely have included him in my repertoire in that way that I ignored him for all those years. I've been alive a long time. I'm like, oh my, I have some time to make up for here. Sorry about that, Dad. I definitely am aware of that. I wanted to just do one quick thing that I want to bring to everybody's attention. I've been on St. John Paul a lot today, but he was the first one to ever write the document. He took something from Paul VI, but he wrote something about, he gathered all the artists together early on in his pontificate, and he gathered them and he wrote a letter to them. And he wanted to tell all the artists to continue their craft because beauty is of God and beauty leads us to hope. And without the beauty of the great arts, it doesn't give us a portal to it. So 10 years after he wrote that document and Benedict was in as Pope, Benedict also, one of the things about Benedict that's sort of fascinating is that, he was the watchdog of the church for so many years. His job was to keep everything kind of as close to the teachings of the church as possible. But he had this beautiful side. I mean, he's the first one to ever write a document on love. And he wrote a second one, and he gathered the artists in the Sistine Chapel. And he wanted to speak to the artists to tell them, there's a reason why I'm saying this, because if you think about Joseph the worker as a carpenter, he probably made such beautiful things. That's why the ring of St. Joseph was so important. And he probably just made beautiful craftsmanship, artisan, if you will. So I wanted to just read one line from the document that Benedict is just always able to capture so eloquently and so efficiency. He says this, he said, as we read, he said, this is dedicated to you that are passionately dedicated to the search for new epiphanies of beauty. It is when we collaborate to carry out our ministry, and he says, as you know, in preaching and rendering accessible, comprehensible to the mind of the people, the things of the spirit, the invisible, the ineffable, the things of God himself. But in this activity, each of you artists are masters. In your task, your mission, and your art consists of grasping treasures from the heavenly realm of the spirit and clothing them in words, colors, forms, making them accessible to the people. And so I've been thinking about that, and I wanted to kind of end like our discussion of Joseph today on that, to think about Joseph as the artisan. Think about the beauty of his work, and think about how the challenge and several of our popes have challenged us to find the beauty in things and to keep things holy and sacred. So I just want to keep that kind of in the forefront of your mind. And then I have a special treat. It'll mean in our in-house session, we have a couple, Corky and Ray Neff, and Corky had joked that her son happens to be a Latin teacher. You know him well, Anne, and she just was joking that would be fun if we could get Patrick. So what happened? I got Patrick. So here we go for our closing prayer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patrick Neff, St. Elizabeth of Hungary School, class of 2002. I'm currently a high school Latin teacher. My parents are Corky and Ray Neff, who are in this class. Tina asked if I could record myself praying the Litany of St. Joseph in Latin so you all would know how it sounds pronounced in Latin.
So if you go to your Litany of
The Litany
St.
of St.
Joseph,
Joseph was approved for public use by St. Pope Pius X in 1909. It is modeled after the Litany of Loreto and contains 21 invocations to St. Joseph,
it's on
which
233.
describe his virtues and the part he played as the foster father of Jesus.
Actually,
The litany is
234.
approved for public use and has a partial indulgence attached.
He's so funny. He was my
Let's
student.
begin.
Okay.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Amen.
Kyrie eleison.
Kyrie eleison.
Christe eleison. Kyrie eleison. Christe audinos. Christe exaudinos. Pater de Caelis Deus. Miserere nobis. Filii Redemptor Mundi Deus. Miserere nobis. Spiritus Sancte Deus. Miserere nobis. Sancta Trinitas Unus Deus. Miserere nobis. Sancta Maria, ora pro nobis. Sancta Joseph, ora pro nobis. Proles David inclita, ora pro nobis. Lumen Patriarcharum, ora pro nobis. Dei Genetricis Sponse, ora pro nobis. Custos Pudice Virginis, ora pro nobis. Filii Dei Nutritiae, ora pro nobis. Christi Defensor Sedule, ora pro nobis. Almae familiae praeses, ora pro nobis. Iosef Justissime, ora pro nobis. Iosef Castissime, ora pro nobis. Iosef Prudentissime, ora pro nobis. Iosef Fortissime, ora pro nobis. Iosef Obedientissime, ora pro nobis. Iosef Fidelissime, ora pro nobis. Speculum patientiae, ora pro nobis. Amator Paupertatis, ora pro nobis. Exemplar Opificum, ora pro nobis. Domesticae vitae decus, ora pro nobis. Custos Virginum, ora pro nobis. Familiarum columen, ora pro nobis. Solatium miserorum, ora pro nobis. Spes agrotantium, ora pro nobis. Patrone morientium, ora pro nobis. Terror daemonum, ora pro nobis. Protector sanctae ecclesiae, ora pro nobis. Agnus Dei, qui tolus peccata mundi, parce nobis Domine. Agnus Dei, qui tollis peccata mundi, exaudi nos Domine. Agnus Dei, qui tollis peccata mundi, miserere nobis. Constituit eum Dominum domus suae, et principem omnis possessionis suae. Oremus. Deus, qui in ineffabili providentia beatum Iosef sanctissimae genetricus tuae sponsum eligere dignatus es, praesta quae sumus ut quem protectorem veneramur in terris, intercessorum habere meriamur in celis, qui vivis et regnas in saecula saeculorum. Amen.
Amen.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
So that was a lot, wasn't it? But it was wonderful to hear it in Latin done well too.
It was beautiful. Yeah,
Great, thank you.
because when I hear it on TV, it's always so fast, and they speak it on TV as fast as they do English. So it was good to hear it well pronounced.
I wanted him to chant it, and he just felt he couldn't do a good job. But as you know, Anne, he does have a great voice, but he,
Oh, he could have done that.
I know. And his
I'm
mother,
going to jeer him.
his mother would have been just beside herself. But anyway,
Yeah.
I want to thank you all, ladies, for being here tonight, and I really appreciate you getting on board. And you will get a little bit more details about the weekend. And as I said, if you can't be there in person, I'm going to make sure that I tape it all and then I'll post it. I'm not going to do it live. I mean, if I do it live, I'm going to do it as a Facebook Live, but I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to record everything.
It's at the
St.
St. Elizabeth's Gym, right?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
9 o'clock to 11.
and then there'll be a brief prayer and music over in the church after that, and hopefully everything goes the way we wanted to. So either way, though, I'll give you access that if you don't, you can't do it, you'll have access to do your consecration, because this has been a beautiful thing. And what better than to give our life to our spiritual mother and father in faith, Mary and Joseph. So it's been a wonderful experience for me. I'm so glad I walked along with each of you. I've learned so much. Like something that Ray Dadovich just said to me is, were we always so formal with Joseph? Why didn't we think of him as dear old dad? And it really is was really impacted me when he said that. So thank you, ladies, for being a part of this, and we'll be in touch before the week's out.
Okay, thanks, Tina.
Bye.
Is there another one next Monday, you said?
No, this is it.
Oh,
Oh,
so,
this is, okay.
so
I
this-
think unless Amy tells me we're going to do one more, but I think Saturday is the last thing, but I will double check that. And but you'll hear from us really shortly. I'm going to
okay.
text her right
This-
now.
Okay.
Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 to 11 in the gym.
Mm.
Okay.
Thanks, ladies.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tina. Good night.
Okay.
Blessings.
Bye-bye.